All right, so welcome to week 4. Welcome to week 4. This is a weekly questions and answer call for Call Center Cast. Your blueprint to starting a 7-figure call center in the next 30 to 60 days. So we've been rocking and rolling. I am going to load up the document for the for this week with questions that were asked throughout the week. Hey, Smeet, welcome. Hope I'm saying that right, Mr. Patel. How you doing, Eric? Good to see you on here. All right. So there was a few questions that came in. I'm going to answer those first. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the ride-along that we've been doing in the student group, which I'm really excited about. And then finally, we will head into any questions that you guys have, and I'll be here for about 45 minutes or so answering those questions. And then, yeah. So let's see. So the first question that was asked earlier was, were there any surprises when you went to sell your call center? So I like that question. You know, the big thing is that I actually wasn't shopping the company when the offer came up to sell it. And that happened with the cleaning business as well, which was pretty cool. But with the call center, really over the past 5 years, and this is something that actually hasn't happened in any other business I've ever started, there were like 6 different people that came to me unsolicited with offers and or investment asked into Vicky Virtual Receptionist. In 2017, about 2 years and 4 months into the business, I was actually offered $1 million unsolicited and ended up turning it down. And that was probably to this day the craziest thing in terms of like surrealness I've done in my life. So when I went to sell the call center, it wasn't really something where, again, I was in the process of trying to sell it. I casually mentioned it to this guy, Thomas Buckton, and he ended up, saying, hey, dude, you're considering selling the call center? Yo, let me throw an offer at you. So I was like, okay, cool. And I sent over the number to him. And I think maybe a day later, he gave me a verbal offer. That verbal offer was about 20% higher than I thought the call center would have sold for at the time anyway. So I was happy about that. And I ended up countering about 10% higher just because. And I actually did this with the cleaning business sale as well. And he said yes. So because it was somebody that I knew, it was a much more relaxed process. There was no business broker. Obviously, there was a lawyer to firm up the documents and such. But it was a very non-stressful, casual process. And so it worked out very well, and I'm very fortunate. Okay, so another question was, if you were to do it again, how would you do it differently? So, that's really what the course is, right? So when I started the company, I didn't know anything. And so there were a lot of mistakes that were made through trial and error. And that trial and error is exactly what I would try to avoid this time around. Some of the things I particularly liked that I did the first time around was I focused on a target audience. So in my case, I focused on cleaning companies, and I just went after that segment of potential buyers. And from we landed those first few clients, and we kept things simple. All of our clients were the same. All of our receptionists had pretty much the same sort of industry protocol that they had to follow for every single one of our clients. And then if we expanded into more industries, it was easier for us to handle that because we already had the baseline experience at that point in terms of how to run a call center. But all that information now is in the course. So, there was no course out there whatsoever, period, when I tried to start. And I don't think there's any course out there, period, especially not for a virtual receptionist company other than this one. So what I did was I created something that I know I would have wanted when I started this, so that other people can get into it. It's such a wide open industry. There's a lot of room for a lot of money, and you're at the point where you can personally become a millionaire without making a dent in what is a huge as well as growing market. Okay, so another question was, what was easier than you worried it would be? Okay, so I'll answer that as if it was two-part. What was easier and what was harder? What was easier was certainly that I thought it would be harder to consistently find agents that were good enough to work for us and do a good job. I had a cleaning company before, and I had a painting company, I had a virtual assistant company, I had a photo booth company. With those different companies, it was hard to consistently find people that were able to be reliable and show up, competent enough to do the work, and then had the right attitude in terms of, just keeping a good attitude, doing good by our customers and that type of thing. And so, when it came to our call center agents, pretty much all the time, we had people that were doing pretty well. Hey, Lauren, welcome. We had people that were doing pretty well in terms of their competency. Pretty much everyone was reliable. There was usually one person that was a little bit of a drag on the rest of the team in terms of their attitude, but I don't remember anyone being absolutely terrible. So where if we did let people go over the years, it wasn't that high, and we knew whether someone was going to work or not within the first week or so. And so it was really easy to sort of move on from an agent before they really had a big effect or impact on a company, particularly and especially in a negative way. Right? So it's much easier to find consistent agents than I thought it would be. Another thing that was easier, and I know this seems ridiculous, but it was easier for us to land clients than I thought it would be. When it came down to it, one, we started off in our niche, which was good, and that led people to us. And then two, eventually we started getting organic traffic. And three, even when we tried paid traffic, our cost per acquisition at $80 per sign up was a lot lower than I thought it would be going to be. Our average lifetime value was somewhere between $1,500 for every sign up and over $3,000 and higher for everyone that actually finished the trial. So to spend $80 in cost per acquisition for a sign up and then have those signups be worth at least $1,500 in revenue and probably $600-700 in profit, it's mind blowing. And frankly, we didn't take it as high as we could have taken it, and I still don't have an answer as to why we didn't. But so customer acquisition was easier. What was harder, way harder, was the phone system. Lauren, the only ad that we did for Vicky Virtual consistently were on Google. So we didn't do a lot of Facebook ads, probably because, business to business. So we focused on Google. We didn't even try any other verticals. And we also did content marketing because we liked what we were getting organically. So it wasn't a huge focus for us. But it was something that we were starting to look into, before I sold the company. So one thing that was harder, though, was definitely the phone system. When I was first putting this thing together, I legitimately thought that I would be able to go into something called Twilio, which is like a technology platform that you can build out a phone system and all kinds of other stuff on, like telecommunications apps you can build on Twilio, on that sort of platform and framework. And they had this documentation, and I'm not even a programmer, but they had this documentation that you could plug in this line and it would enable the agent to make a call. You could put in this line of code and it would enable an agent to accept a call. So I thought we'd be able to just put together those quick few lines of code, and that would cover the basics for answering the call. and making a call, and we'd be okay. Well, that ended up not being the case whatsoever. Thankfully, I learned early enough, like before we launched, that it wasn't going to work that way. And we ended up going with it was on a third phone system that we finally was using something that actually made sense. So, that was definitely very difficult, and it was always something that we were constantly working on. And anyone in this remote space is going to be constantly working on, what they can do to improve their phone system. All right, so Jacob asked, Don, did you manage your PPC ads yourself at the $80 per acquisition? And Lauren said it was very good. Yeah, thank you. So, it might be a little bit different now, but frankly, even if it were triple that, it doesn't matter. Even if you're spending $400, maybe not when you first start, that's not great, but long term, even if you're spending $400 per sign up, if you're pretty good at converting through trial, which if they're highly targeted leads, they're probably going to cost more money anyway. So if you're using like highly targeted leads that are really perfect for what you're offering, and then you sign them up for like even, again, $400, if you maintain like what we eventually ended up doing, which was over $300 in average monthly revenue, and then a lifetime of almost 2 years, that's almost over $7,000 in lifetime revenue. Now, over the course of the company, it was actually closer to $3,000. But as we became an older company, our lifetime value went up because there were simply customers that never left. And so my point is that on those signups, the average revenue as well as net profit per acquisition was so high, we had a tremendous amount of room in terms of our ad spend. We just never took it there. What really ended up happening was we would turn it on, we land some clients, and then we turn it off. We'd onboard those clients, adjust, and then, we turned it on, turned it off. So that's what we did. Neha, welcome. Welcome. Sometimes I feel like I'm saying your name incorrectly, so I apologize for that if I did. Okay, so any other questions for the moment? And, because you joined a little later, obviously there will be a replay of this. That's one beautiful thing I like about doing lives each week. There will be a replay in the group that you can look at. Now, one thing I did want to talk about that I think is really cool is really what the ride-along is, right? Because in the student group, what we're going through right now is the ride-along. I explained it a little bit, but I want to be abundantly clear as to what it is. What it is every single day I am posting, for 30 days, I am posting that day's sort of task as well as goals to complete for the day, as well as what videos to watch. And so, and then once the videos are watched and the tasks are completed, you would put in that day's hashtag and say, I'm done. So for day 3, it was hashtag creation. So, just so you know, today was the day that people are supposed to have had their domain name purchased, and they're starting the process of incorporation, and they're starting the process, like the very start of the process to getting their website done. So we're working through the steps to launching the call center in 30 days, day by day, and we can sort of section out each post by day, and the topic is under day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and so on. So anyone that comes in will be able to just follow along that path. So, you have 2 ways. You can either go through the self-paced coursing and do your own thing, or if you want to be held a bit more accountable and follow a bit more of a flow, you can go through the ride-along. So I think it's a really cool thing. One of our students, Denise, is the one that suggested it first. I'm really glad we're doing it. Really excited. And we're doing an additional weekly call in that group every week after this call today, each Wednesday, to sort of recalibrate. Okay, what have you gotten done for the week? Is there anything that you had trouble completing? That type of stuff. So I'm really excited about that. There was another question that was asked before that I haven't covered yet. And that was really what brought me into Vikiverso and what sort of kept me into it, what made me excited about it. So the thing that, because obviously like the business was started out of a need. I had a cleaning company that, we had this need of having our calls answered, and I looked into the options, and none of the options were very exciting. So I ended up launching the call center for cleaning companies as a direct response to that. However, simply realizing that was not enough for someone that's constantly working on other projects to say, okay, this is the business I want to do. But in my research, I realized a few things. One, I realized that all the clients are recurring, right? In cleaning, some of our clients were recurring, some are not. And so you're constantly fighting to try to keep your recurring numbers up so that your business can grow. There are no seven-figure cleaning companies that don't have a bunch of recurring clients, okay? The second thing, Kevin, I'll answer that in just a second. The second thing that was cool about that, outside of the fact that all clients are recurring without fail, is that the revenue for, especially in the context of call centers, a lot of call centers, what they do is they focus on landing like 10 to 20 clients that are like 5 figures a month per account. So what happens is that or maybe 6 figures per month per account. So what happens is that when you land the one contract, you hopefully sign them up for a deal, you hire all kinds of employees, you set up an entire basically entity and structure for one client. And so you're completely, with that in mind, you're beholden. The dynamic is you end up beholden to that client. So if you lose that one client, you're laying people off, you're stressed out, the dynamic of your entire company can change. With us, our average client, the way I thought of it at the time was about $250 a month. So I knew that no one individual client, right, once we got above like 20 clients, no one individual client was going to change the dynamic or structure of our business. There's a few clients that were very difficult, so we actually let go of them. We fired them as clients. But outside of that, when we lost a client on a given day, we got to the point eventually where no one single client represented more than 1% of our total revenue. So when you're in that position, and you will be if you grow this thing, when you're in that position, you're bulletproof. Your revenue stream is bulletproof. And that's why when potential investors come in, they're like, holy crap, I love this industry. I love this niche within the call center industry because your revenue is there to stay. It's not dependent on just you being there. The system is there because the agents are answering the call. All the software processes and stuff are in place for them to answer the calls and service your customers. And your revenue per client is a small portion of your total revenue. And again, you're not winning them again every single month. You're not doing all kinds of innovations like with digital marketing. You don't have relative value depending on the client. If you're answering calls for someone, it's helpful no matter what. So that was the real big thing that got me involved. And that was the thing that made this a very non-stressful business for me for the majority of the time I ran it. Okay, so Kevin asked if it was an IVR service. Hey, Thomas, welcome, man. Welcome to the call. So Kevin Tucker asked if this is an IVR service. So an IVR service is sort of a software company. This is not a software company. What we're providing is actual human agents, in our case, located in the US, that answer calls as live operators on behalf of small business clients. So we provide a service. It's basically like, your standard answering service, except with an answering service, typically, you're just taking messages and you're not really answering too many questions. With our service, it's virtual receptionist. They are as if, the premise is as if they're in-house employee receptionists that are taking calls for you, but they just so happen to be remote and they work for us. So if you're like a solo law firm and you need a high-quality receptionist to answer your call for you, then our service takes care of that without that law firm having to spend $3,000 to $4,000 a month to either like hire a paralegal that they don't even need a paralegal yet for, or to hire a receptionist on top of their paralegal at like, an exorbitant expense in comparison to what they could pay us to achieve the same result. So it's a very needed service that frankly not a lot of people know about yet. But our biggest sort of marketing piece was we just need to expose the fact that we are an available service offering to our potential target client. Once our potential target client figures out really what a virtual receptionist company does and what it is, they're like, I'm so glad this exists. I'm going to sign up for a free trial. And that's why our cost per acquisition was so low. And that's why there's literally 4 people in this very small student group that have already sort of landed clients that are ready to sign up as soon as they launch their company. So client acquisition will not be the problem for you guys. I promise that. Okay, so Kevin Tucker said, how much does it cost per month? So the way it works is the company that you create in this scenario, it's typically done on different pricing tiers. Now, what I would recommend is I'm just going to type in for you, Kevin. I'm going to type in, go to vickyvirtual.com/pricing. And that's an example of what Vicky Virtual's pricing schedule is. It's like on a tiered plan, you answer a certain amount of calls per month that will equate to a certain number of minutes. And depending on the number of minutes that company uses each month, that's the price plan, sort of like an old school cell phone plan. That's the plan that they'll be on. So it's just as simple as that. Okay, so did that answer everyone's questions so far? I hope so. I hope that answered everyone's questions so far. Okay, well, I'm just going to assume it does. Yeah, so that was all the questions that, that were had sort of coming into this. Let me see if I covered it all, just to make sure. Yeah, so that covers everything in terms of questions that were coming into the call. Okay, so I did want to talk a little bit more about, what was it that really brought me into the virtual receptionist space. So the 2 things that I brought up already were, the clients are recurring, so the revenue is really strong. And then also, it's a situation where once people understand that virtual receptionists exist and they understand exactly what it is, they end up really excited about it. Another thing is that there's a very high ceiling to it. So, for instance, again, with the cleaning company and other like local service businesses that I had, you were either geographically limited or you were limited in some other respect. So, I mean, you were geographically limited with cleaning. Also, the thing is you can open up a new city. But I'll tell you right now, if you open up a new city and it's not a franchise, and in some cases, even if you are starting to franchise out, you're basically launching an entirely new company. Because when it comes to cleaning companies, there's not unless you're already like really big, people in a new city don't care that you're some cleaning company that exists in some other city when you're completely new to their market. So every single new market that you launch into is essentially you redoing the same business over and over and over again as your only real means of expansion once you like get to the, the limits of the market share in your particular city. That's not the case for call centers, right? Especially with it being remote. Our customers were in all over the US mostly. We had customers in Canada. And then in some cases, we had customers that were technically international, but they needed some type of US-based situation so they could like answer questions. So like, we had a few like clothing apparel companies that were maybe like Italian. I think there was one Italian that, we were answering like customer service questions that came in because they had a bunch of people from the US that were purchasing their product. And they, as Italians, they didn't have their accents were strong, or maybe their English wasn't that good. So we served at their US base in terms of being able to answer a question. So we weren't limited from a geographical perspective, and that makes expansion a lot easier. Plus, it's really suitable to a lot of different industries. And then the final thing was, I was able to digest all of it, right? I had put together a software company before. I had put together something that required employees before. And, I knew that if I just pushed at it, the concept of this is really pretty freaking simple. You're hiring agents, you're getting a means for those agents to answer calls, and you're finding clients for those agents that are answering calls. That's it. That's the only thing you ever have to do. Everything else that needs to be done was, sort of is taught in the course, and those were the three things that I needed to figure out as my entire job, right? So once I was able to quantify all of the pieces and say, okay, these are the pieces, now I could visualize, and then boom, I was in. So that's what it took. That's what brought me in and kept me in to virtual receptionist companies. Okay, so Jacob asked a good question. Don, can you give your thoughts on a free trial versus a money-back guarantee like Ruby offers? Now, Ruby Receptionist is one of the larger companies specifically in the virtual receptionist niche. Now, to give you an idea of their size, and this actually gives you an awesome thing in terms of the multiples. When Ruby was doing $12 million in sales, they sold a majority stake in their company for $38 million. So they didn't sell the entire company. They simply sold a majority stake for $38 million. So assuming they sold, even if they sold 75% of their company, and I'm thinking it's probably closer to 55, 60%. But even if they sold 3/4 of their company at $38 million, you're looking at about a $50 million valuation on $11 million in revenue, not profit, revenue. So that would be close to 5x revenue as a multiple. You don't find that in a lot of companies, especially ones that aren't giant. And $11 million, frankly, for us, it can be large. In terms of personal income, it's a lot. But in the classification of companies, it's a tiny company. So Ruby, the way they did things before, Jacob, was they used to do the free trial. And what they found was they, first of all, the prices are a lot higher than most. And they're a bit more focused on trying to convince you to stick with them, even though their pricing is higher than the competitors, by wowing you with their level of quality premium service. And so in doing that, they do what they can to sort of lock you in, and then they justify the fact that you paid them through their high level of service. So hopefully, you don't go through the hassle of asking for your money back. So I don't think it's necessary to do that. We never did that. I'm sure at their level of data, they put a lot of sort of research and effort into whether or not they should make the switch, and they decided to make the switch. Definitely for any new company, I don't think that's necessary, and I don't think it's something that's gonna, make or break or be a big difference in terms of this is gonna be more successful if I do it this way. I think there needs to be an incentive. And since the agents are going to be paid at their full-time wage anyway, and most of those costs are fixed, there's no reason to give up free trial because you're technically not really losing any money during the trial period. You're gaining an opportunity to wow your customers or your trial customers enough to continue on and pay you money. And so in Vicky Virtual case, about 50% even at our worst, 50% of trials would become client. And that's when we weren't paying attention. And frankly, we weren't doing a great job at it. When we did better at it, it went up to like 70%. Another 30%, they would generally decide that they didn't even have enough call volume to justify paying $99 a month. They get like 1 or 2 calls a month. We had a lot of people, for instance, that were starting, like literally the day they opened their company with the day they signed up for us. So sometimes, it doesn't work out for them. So you can't win everybody. Again, I don't think it's something that's going to be a hindrance in terms of offering the free trial. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. David McHale, welcome. Chris Thompson, welcome. And Mike Ziarko, welcome. Thank you guys for being on the call. Do any of the 3 of you have any questions that I haven't answered yet, or anything that I can clarify? I'm very happy to do it. That is the point of this weekly thing. All right. Doesn't seem to be any questions at the moment. Okay, so no problem, Jacob. Happy to help there. Happy to help there. Okay. So, I'm still going to be on here for another 12 minutes or so. If anything comes up in terms of questions you have, it can be as varied as you can think of. Throw whatever you want at me. I'm happy to answer that question. All right. So I'll wait about 30 seconds. And if after 30 seconds no questions come in, I will talk a bit more in general about the virtues of a virtual receptionist company. So Kevin Tucker asked, are these receptionists your employees or independent contractors, and are they working at home? So the answer to both of those questions are, the receptionists are employees of the company. They can be 1099 contractors, but we strongly recommend that you make them W-2 employees. If they're, what some people do, what some of our competitors do, for instance, they might have a lot of CPAs and accountants, and CPAs and accountants, great category for this, by the way. They have a lot of call volume between like January and May, which is tax time. And then, so you might have someone that is $99 a month, and then during tax time, they're $500-600 a month. And that happened like 50% of the time for attorneys and accountant and CPA. So in that case, what they would do, if they had a lot of them, what they would hire on temporary staff that were 1099 to help with that surge, because their client volume might not have gone up, but their call volume went up within their same client roster. So you handle more agent, you hire more agents to handle that. So that's an idea. And then the ones that were there, throughout the year, those are W-2 employees. Now, 1099 or not, in our case, in our course, we teach you how to build a call center that consists of remote work from home agents. All right. So in our case, it was a advantage. It's a market advantage because it allows you to keep your pricing competitive while still retaining a healthy margin because you're not paying for an office. In addition, people like the whole virtue of having all the employees in an office or whatever. I don't think that's necessary for this type of deal. One, because there's plenty of camaraderie in like the online chat, like the Slack group and stuff. There's ways to make that completely fun. Two, you have the ability and freedom to hire from a much larger applicant pool because they don't have to be geographically close to wherever the office headquarters are, right? So you can hire people in different states, and other than making sure you're complying with those tax and wages laws, it's very easy to do it. All right. So you can take advantage of certain things. So what we did was we had some agents in different time zones that were helping us cover more of our coverage hours without it being like it's much of a deterrent to their like schedule. It would be closer to a 9 to 5 for them because they happen to be in a different time zone across the United States. So it's very beneficial. And then third, the biggest thing that people don't realize, and we will tell our potential client this, is that in a centralized office-based call center, you're going to have background noise. Everyone doesn't have, like, you're never going to have a call center where every single receptionist there has their own closed door office. Doesn't make any sense. You can have the high cubicle, and maybe if everything is really good, you can reduce it down to a minimum, but it's always going to be there. That's not going to be a problem if you qualify your agent properly to the point where you're making sure that they have their own quiet and closed spaces that they're working in. So our client preferred that because there wouldn't be enough or as much background noise. All right, so Lauren, what is life now? What is life like now that you sold the company? So right now, outside of working on this course stuff, I have been putting a lot of effort into it because we're building out the sort of marketing funnel for paid ads and stuff. And frankly, I haven't put this much effort into a marketing funnel ever, not in a very, very long time. So it's fun doing that. I think I'm putting together a site that will be one of the best looking sites I've ever created in my entire life. So there's some fun there. Also, like after we sold the company, there was a few months where I was helping with transition. So, just answering certain questions. It's not a very difficult transition, but I was sort of there and I was on call, still participating in the company team chats and all that type of stuff. And then, just clearing up some odds and ends. So there was a little bit of stuff there. And then I did a little bit of digital marketing, had a few digital marketing clients. But now at this point, other than working on the marketing funnel, I'm chilling out. And I'm excited to do that. I'm excited to sort of move forward on this chapter. And frankly, it's a 2-year period. We'll see what happens after the 2-year non-compete. But, there are times I think when, it's good to have a bit of a break and not work as hard. And I'm certainly happy to be going through one of those periods right now. Okay, Chris Thompson asked if there are a lot of competition in the market. So in the virtual receptionist space, there really isn't much competition at all. There's a reason why our cost per acquisition was low. There's a reason why, again, 4 people in the student group have already landed a client, so to speak, and in some cases they've landed 2 or 3, and no one has actually launched like a virtual receptionist company yet, and 4 of them already have a client that's like ready. Now, what that said to me is that competition isn't that fierce. Now, there's a lot of demand, and there's a lot of knowledge about sort of answering services, which a lot of our target clients, they go after answering services because they don't know, again, they don't know that virtual receptionist companies exist. And so again, our real job is to let them know that virtual receptionist companies exist and that it's like an enhanced, more premium version of an answering service. And in that respect, again, there's not a whole lot of companies doing it, but the demand is like, if you think of every business in the country, probably a good 10 to 15% of them could use a virtual receptionist in some capacity. The demand is almost limitless. It's boundless. It's giant. The entire, every single company in the space right now isn't anywhere near capturing the potential of this market, which is why it's grown by 20% year over the year. So in terms of competition in the market, I'm telling you, it's not very competitive. I can't tell you what it's going to be like in, say, 10 years, but right now, I really can't stress to you enough. There's a reason why I'm the only person that has put out a course on it. It's because the market is not very competitive. Okay, so it is now, I hope that answers your question, Chris. So it's now, what is it, about 7:41, so I'll be on here for about 5 more minutes or so. Kevin, was your question answered properly? I hope it was. Um, so now next week, I'll hang on a few more minutes here, but next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one of our students just sort of participate in the back and forth Q&A call, just to sort of, one, change things up a bit, and two, you can get a sense of, the motivation behind someone that is working through this process of starting virtual receptionist company for the first time. So I think a lot of you will be able to connect with someone in that situation. And I wanted to sort of provide that perspective and experience. So next week, we're going to have one of our students on. And so I'll also be doing the Q&A, but I'll be asking that particular student questions about, what it's like, what are some of the obstacles and hurdles that they are pushing through as they bring this thing to fruition. So hopefully you guys are on for week 5. I think it's going to be really exciting. Okay, so any other questions at the moment? I'm going to hang around for 2 or 3 more minutes. And then that'll be all, folks. And then, another thing is there's not a whole lot of questions that are being asked in the regular group during the week. Feel free to ask questions. Like, just sort of post in the group when you have a question. I am here all the time. When this group inevitably and eventually get to whatever size it gets to, because I'm not going to be putting out other courses. I'm not going to be one of those guys that's like, oh, this year I'm doing a course on this. I'm sticking to this. And so inevitably this group is going to get larger. And so my attention in terms of individually, it's going to be more diverted, and there'll be people like on the team and people that have started call centers and stuff helping out in terms of answer. But right now, all of you guys get me. I'm answering the questions directly. I'm here all the time, and I'm very excited to answer these questions because it's a very exciting thing for me. So feel free to answer questions throughout the week within the group, and again, I'll be happy to help. Let's see. All right, so 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes. So one other thing I'm excited about is I actually changed my deck setup the other day. Well, actually last night. I was working with, like for the last several months, I was working with one of the big 34-inch monitors. And since I've been working on this marketing funnel, I put together the 2 big 34-inch ultra-wide monitors. So it's nice to get out those bad boys. And I'll show you guys some pictures of that. That'll be pretty fun. And it's still the claws of winter are holding on in the Chicago area. So still very dark out. Feels like it's freaking 10 p.m. even though it's only 7:45. But we're here. Okay, so last call for any questions for week 4 Q&A. Again, next week we are going to do sort of a back and forth question and answer between myself and then one of the ongoing students in the group. So again, I think that'll be really exciting, and I hope you guys are on for that. Okay, so this will conclude my call for today. Really appreciate you guys being on. It's really exciting. This is the very, very early goings of what I'm sure is going to be an actual movement. Again, this is a tremendously large space that we haven't touched the surface of yet. Not a lot of people talk about this. People talk about answering service, and people are asking all the time. I'm sure if you're in some type of business group, there are businesses asking all the time, how do I get my calls answered? And you can be the solution for that. So, this is something that's a very simple business, but if you make the wrong mistake, it can be very time cost and money cost. So the course helps you work through that trial and error. I spent essentially in terms of opportunity and wasted dollars over 6 figures in terms of if I knew everything I know now, I wouldn't have spent that or I would have achieved that much more revenue. And not in terms of marketing, just from an operational perspective. So a lot of you, yes, you can create a call center without the course. The course just takes away a lot of the trial error, makes things smoother, faster, and less hassle. So Donald out. Thanks a lot for your time. Chris did ask, before I hop off here, how many employees should you hire in the beginning? The answer is 2. Very simple. And frankly, if you're on a budget, you can just, honestly, you can work yourself. There's a few people that have done that. Just work yourself. It's a lot harder, but if you have $0, all you have to do is land the client by hustling, land some client, have them pay you money to answer calls directly, and then the phone system setup is easier too. And you're making money right out of the gate with like very low money. But in terms of hiring people, recommendation is 2. So I explained why it's 2 in the course, but the answer for that is 2. So again, thanks a lot for being on, guys. And again, feel free to ask any other questions you have in the group. I'll answer them throughout the week. But thanks a lot for being on this live call, and I'll see you next week with one of our students.